Welcome to Under the Fringe. We are your hosts, Andy Yablonsky and Julie Babin, two interior designers with almost 50 years of combined experience. And while we love design, our passion has really become helping the next generation of designers struggle less, earn more, and create more freedom in their lives. We offer a whole host of support options to help you create the structures you need to really thrive and grow. More to come on that at the end of the show. Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
Thank you. Same. I'm Andy Blonsky.
This is Julie Babin.
And we are Under the Fringe. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If this is not your first time listening, thank you for coming on this journey with us. We really appreciate you sticking around, and hopefully we are bringing lots of great value to you and your business. So just wanted to give a shout out to the 15 people whose podcast this is number one. We love you.
Yes.
And speaking of love, we were just chatting about today's topic, and that is, what are you really great at that you also feel comfortable charging a lot for?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about
this? It's
this?
a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So I think it's no surprise to those of us in this industry that most of what we want to be doing, and or some of us are already doing, is working with high-end clients, high-end budgets, high-end products, because there's a lot of money to be made there. At the end of the day, as much as this is an artistic pursuit and a creative endeavor, it's also a business that I hope you're making a lot of money of. And so,
yeah, interior design is a great business because there really is a lot of products to sell.
Yeah. In our last episode, well, we also talked about in our last episode the number of different ways there are of making money. So if you haven't listened to that one, please check it out.
Yeah.
It also talks a lot about your niche. But there's the energy of the money, right? It's and this is a big thing for us. And I think, being in California, and I have a friend that, is well, I have a lot of friends actually that are into, let's just say, like, alternative thoughts. And what I mean by that is, like, some people might call it woo-woo. I think I read a thing not that long ago on one of our podcasts that people refer to this, the manifesting, like, some people call it prayer, some people call it sorcery, other people call it manifestation, some people call it, there's a scientific word for it that I am blanking on right now, but I'll find the meme and post it on our page. But that no one disagrees that manifestation is a real thing. And as we have worked more and more with manifestation, what we understand about it is all energy, right? Everything is energy, but manifestation is the alignment of energy. And so we're talking about, what are you really good at and how much do you feel comfortable charging for it? Because that's the alignment of your energy, right?
Yeah.
Your comfort level and what you feel comfortable charging are directly aligned. And so and I say this to people often, if somebody tells me what they're making and we're chatting, I frequently will say, you need to raise your rates.
Yeah.
Right.
I think you say it every time.
Most people
could be.
But what we don't talk about in those conversations, and it's kind of a flippant way, like I'm aware that people are undercharging, but the underlying cause of their undercharging is their discomfort with how much something costs. So if I say, and again, to be transparent, I don't charge hourly anymore. I charge by the project. So,
which is energetic as
in
well.
itself, yeah. But, and the part, and again, we've said this a
Way
million
that you
times,
got
but I
there,
just
yeah.
reiterate, if I gave somebody an hourly rate and it wasn't tied to a number of hours, someone could, project that like if I said I'm $150 an hour and they multiply it by 500, they're going to get this number that they might not be comfortable with because they don't have anything to ground that hourly rate.
Yeah.
So I personally switched to a flat fee model so that I could just ground the client in the reality of like, if you're doing a ground up project that's say 6,000 square feet, I'm probably going to charge you about $300,000 for my interior design time because that is, I've equated the number of hours with, the project scope, and I understand that that is how much I'm working, and that's the value
Level
that
of
I bring.
service. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a level of service, there's a level of experience. But that's the value that I bring to the project. And I'm no longer tying my time to an hourly rate. I am tying my value and what I provide to the rate that I am providing to the client.
And I think that's such an important element to think of your business in that way. Like there's just a certain something that you bring to every project.
Yeah, so we all have a unique value proposition, and part of what we're asking when we ask, is there something that you are great at that you can charge a lot for, is what is your unique value proposition? And it's something that we want every design firm to understand because it is what separates you from your competition. That's a term I use loosely because I don't think there is competition. Like there's plenty of work for everyone, but your work will find you more easily when you understand what you're bringing to the table, because someone wants what you are offering up. And the more clarity you have around what you're offering, the easier it is for somebody to say yes to.
Yeah. And
Oh, go ahead.
And I think like when you're talking of, when you think about it in terms of how much value do I bring or do I create, it makes it it turns into a product.
Yes.
And then you sort of get to define things like, well, we always only ever do a project if we also can do the purchasing, or if there's certain terms that you want set, like every time we do this, or every project we work with so and so, or just like whatever you want it to be, your complete method of designing for people. You can have it be like a set packaging of the way that you do stuff. And that can be a good way for me to think about, well, that's how much this costs because I'm creating this experience that they get to use every day if you're designing someone's house. So that to me makes the numbers look very different than just thinking, oh, it's going to be this many hours. And
yeah, I think I love that. I love what you just said about it being an experience. I think that it is an experience, and you're right, it is a product. Because it's not, at the end of the day, like you are the thing that somebody is investing in to create their long-term investment, right? So you are your own unique value proposition. But if I am one of maybe 3 designers that are being interviewed for a project, how do I stand out? Yes, my personality, sure. But for me, I think it's going to be an alignment of, this is how I move through the project. I have a process that's very clear. I talk about budget, and I make some pretty big promises. Like I don't go outside of the budget or the timeline without a lot of conversation. And so, I think that so for me, when somebody hires me, they have an expectation that the budget and the timeline are going to be respected and adhered
Yeah.
to, unless there's something that is not within my control.
Yeah. Yeah. They
But
don't let them know.
yes, and frequently there are, right? Like there are things that come up on construction sites
Changes.
and things that like, oh, that thing is in the wall and we weren't expecting something like that to be there, or this is a load bearing wall and it's going to cost an extra $10,000
Yeah.
to put in that moment frame. So sorry, right? But those are things I can't control. But if I'm not looking at the right product and the right price point, I've wasted time. And
Yeah.
and that is something that my clients rely on me to not do.
Yeah, because usually the contractors have allowance
Yeah,
line, some type of line items, perhaps somewhere for the stone or the tile or something, and you don't want to get started with your design until you have those pieces of information to at
yeah,
least utilize to some capacity. I mean, you might decide that it's not, that those numbers are not high enough. I think a lot of times the contractor prices the stone at like granite and he doesn't ever price marble. And you're always
yeah.
like, well, dude, you didn't even start off at a good spot. So
Well,
it's,
actually, so
it's not over budget.
right. So true.
Yeah, it's always good to know all of those things up front so you can start designing appropriately.
Well, I think we've talked about this in the past, but this just circles right back around to our topic of today. So I think Julie and I, learned early on that presenting a budget to the client that has all of the items that we would select for the project, regardless of whether the contractor has it in their budget or not, there might be a little bit of overlap in the beginning.
Yeah.
We have realistic price points for
Yeah, that's a good
things that
one.
we're going to select. And in general, so I start off with a general budget that has, it's our budget that you can get when you join our community. It's a low, middle, high. And the reason I start with that is because, again, I want to start a conversation about money as soon as possible, right?
Mhm.
And the reason I'm willing to do that is because I know how expensive this is. I'm the expert in this field and the client's not the expert. They don't know. So if I said to a client, like, well, do you have a budget in mind? Yeah, sure. I'm sure they have like the lowest possible amount that they would want to spend. It doesn't mean that it's realistic. And it doesn't mean that we will be able to stick to it. And
Mhm.
so it's a disservice to a client to ask if they have a budget in mind when they haven't seen any numbers and they're not working in this industry. That's where our responsibility comes in. And so
Mhm.
when I'm talking about the energetics of money and I'm bringing up a price point to a client, it's because I want to understand where they are in regards to where I, from experience, know they need to be, right? So if a
Yeah.
client's like, I mean, I've had a few clients say like, oh, I don't want to spend more than $50,000 for this bathroom remodel. And I'm like, I mean, you haven't hired a
Hey.
contractor, you haven't picked out any materials, and you don't know my fees, but you have decided you don't want to spend more than $50,000. I don't really think that that is going to be a good fit for me because that person might be closed to spending more. And in my experience, $50,000 is sort of the minimum that you're going to get away with for a bathroom. And that probably doesn't include the finishes and the fixtures and the design time. It's the contractor fee. And so, and again, this isn't all over the country. This is very particular to the Bay Area. So if you're listening other places, thank you. And also your price points are going to be, your contractor price points are going to be different. Your maybe design time is going to be different. Your material, like we're all buying materials from the same places. Generally, like stone is X amount of dollars per square foot. A sink on build.com is going to be the same for somebody in Kansas as it is for us. So
Mhm.
I don't really think that the fixtures and finishes vary in terms of pricing from thing to thing. It's more like what echelon of price they
Labor.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you specing Waterworks? Are you specing American Standard? Very different product price points. But you being able to talk about either one of those is
Mhm.
really the topic that we are
Well, because
wanting.
also sometimes talking about money leads everyone to the schedule. Like, oh, well, if it's going to cost this much, then I might wait to do a certain part of the project. A client might decide that they want to do this in phase two
Mhm.
and take that out of the budget for now. And so to be able to have numbers for everything is so important because you can truly like plan the calendar, you know, the
Yep.
planning of the actual meetings, and so the project can get done. And then also, of course, how much you're going to charge. But if it's easier to talk yourself into it, it's also like a good angle to, well, we have to do the budget because that'll explain the length of the project.
Yeah. And I think I love that you just brought that up because so if you split it up into two phases, the design time increases, right? You can't phase a project without having extra design time, but you don't have to pay everything all at one time. So
Mhm.
I guess the question becomes then, are you as a designer willing to say that it's more expensive for you? Because this is the energy of what we're talking about. I think there are so many moments where I don't I don't think I've had this. I don't think I had this because I started out at a job. This is where I met Julie. And our firm, like everything was just high end. People came in there with hundreds
It
of
was
thousands
kind
of
of the same
dollars.
price point in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but they just like it was never, I mean, I think I remember having a conversation with a client and we were talking about sconces. And she's like,
Yeah.
well, how much is that one? And I said, it's $5,000. And she said, princess, let's go with the $3,000 one.
That's a little extreme.
Right. So she thought a $6,000 or $5,000 sconce was expensive, but was willing to spend $3,000, which
Which
like
is also very expensive.
that was like at the time, I think all of my living expenses were around $3,000. So I mean, it just like so for me to spend $3,000 on one thing and she needed six of them because they were going in multiple bathrooms, like my little self just had to divorce. I could never, in that moment afford a $3,000 sconce. But here I had a
Yeah.
client who was building their fourth vacation home, and that's what they wanted. And it was like
Mhm.
a big deal for them to spend that kind of money. And
Yeah.
so I I quickly and early learned in my career that what I would be able to afford and what was on the table for my clients was just like night and day, right? And it got easier and easier to say these big numbers. It was almost like going to a party. You get a $3,000 sconce and you get a $3,000 sconce and you get $6,000 worth of bedding, right? And I'm just thinking, like, I got to get a new car and I'm going to spend about $10,000 on it right now. Like,
Yeah.
and so it's just all these different things. And if I had let my own ideas about how much things should cost or could cost me, I might have been afraid to talk about money with those clients. But because I just got brought up, it was like I got raised in a design firm where this was just what was normal. I I don't think I had time to even think about being afraid, but
Right. Yeah, it was
oh
just normal that we were going to be in that price point.
yeah. But I think that there are a lot of designers who maybe are pitching things at a price point that they're uncomfortable with.
Mhm.
And then that translates into discomfort for the client because the client may not know what's wrong, but they know something is wrong, right? So without you communicating anything about your own personal history with money, your own ideas about money, anything else, your discomfort is what comes across. And then
Mhm.
it makes for these uncomfortable moments. And what I found is that it creates a lack of trust. Because
Yeah, yeah, you definitely want to be confident when you talk about this stuff. But the one thing for me that always helps is like what is the house like? like how much does it cost? Like what's the value of the house? What's the type of architecture? That'll usually give you some parameters of as to what would be considered spending too much. Is usually I decide that based on like the how much is the house worth. You can sort
Yep.
of tell when it's going to be, you know, spending more on something. Um, based on the style of house usually helps me a lot to decide like where you're at. And I think a lot of it's like you're saying, it's like getting out of your own money story and
Yep.
realizing this is the almost like the historic era of this building. This house was built in this year, in this era, and we want to honor that. And I
Yep.
usually use that as a pretty strong guiding post. And that helps a lot, right? But obviously there's other things that people are going to request. I think a lot of people like to maybe save money like in their guest rooms or things like that. But for the primary rooms like living room and master bedroom and all those the main spaces, usually you can determine by the style of architecture how much you can spend on that stuff.
Sure. And I think, it's the just coming back around to the idea of like the energetics behind it. So we can talk about those things, but if we're not comfortable doing that, then it's a problem, right? And so I can come up with a number, but if my own internal alignment doesn't feel good about that number, it's going to come across to the client.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think having a variety of ways of creating the numbers and like understanding what the budgets are, like, we talked about having a budget at the very beginning, basing that budget off of architecture, zip code.
Yes, of course.
There's a number, right? There's a number of ways of getting to those budgets and understanding like how much should be spent, but what do we do when we know how much should be spent and we're still not comfortable having the conversation? I think that's the part that gets really, really tricky, or can be a sticky wicket, and certainly it could influence your business in a lot of ways. So distrust amongst the client is definitely one that I can understandably, like, I've watched it happen where there's just this inability to talk about the budget or talk about the time bill or talk about, right, there's all these pieces of our business that have to do with money. And when we are not clear about how we feel about money, it becomes really challenging to have a conversation about it, because our own ideas and our own alignment around those price points can really get in the way and muck things up. So if you're not comfortable talking about the invoice, do you send it or do you hold it? Right?
Yeah, you definitely want to get comfortable before you send the invoice. So I know that could seem impractical, but that's ideal. Like if I'm like, oh my God, I'm completely freaking out about this invoice. Yeah, don't send it. Like get it together, figure out what's wrong. Usually, and that's what I was gonna say, this is a great time to journal or other things too. But like whatever's wrong, you want to get it out. So you can write it down. Oh my God, I'm freaking out about blah, blah, blah. And really just let your thoughts just flow out to figure out what is really underneath what's wrong. Where are you struggling? And it is, of course, a great idea to work on feeling like unblocked around that, so you can feel really good and come back around and create a new like mental pattern, right? You're creating new mental patterns in these
absolutely
type of moments, and maybe wait until the next morning to send the invoice. Obviously you want to work on changing your energetics, especially when you're sending invoices and contracts. And I've done that a bunch of times where you have a big contract, maybe you feel really nervous, like spend a bunch of time writing it out and really think about like all the different things. Usually it's kind of like a bunch of like boogeymen in the closet. And you're like, okay, well, I mean, that makes sense. And I'm afraid of that. That seems pretty normal. So it's like, just get it out. I think it's a great exercise. And I was also thinking, obviously, once you're feeling better, you can almost do like role playing, but I think there's like a certain level of practicing, because you want to just be like, oh, well, that living room was $30,000 and that kitchen was $80,000 and this bedroom was how much, Andy? 50 $50,000 for a bedroom. But just that, like, I noticed for me personally, when I paid attention to how much the room cost, or just like a lump sum, like this room, or you know, like Andy's really good, like two bath, one kitchen and two baths. Like you can always be like, oh, that's how much this costs. And so I think it's really good to practice like those lump sums that are like sort of rolling off of your tongue, like, okay, yeah, that's, that a living room's going to be between 20 to 40 grand in just the furniture. And you're able to say, I think there's a level of practicing or role playing around those type of totals. I think it's good to know the totals, like kind of almost memorize them.
I'm a huge fan of knowing your numbers. Like if
right, exactly.
Right. So these are the things that we deal with all the time. These are products and things that we're coming into contact with on a regular basis. So really understanding the room total and knowing, if somebody's like, how much does it cost to do a kitchen? I mean, obviously it depends on the size of the kitchen and the complexity of the kitchen. There's all these ins and outs.
But you should know the range
around that, but I would want to, and I might even say like for a 10 by 12 kitchen, which is a really common size and like a rancher style home, that is going to run between $15,000 and $18,000 in design time in my firm. Right.
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
That's with like probably a mid-century style going on, because that has a fairly like clean layer of design. It's not fussy. There's not a ton of details. Like those are the kinds of things I'm thinking about when I'm pricing out all these options for people. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Not just that every single kitchen is going to run 15 to 18 grand. It's that there's all these other pieces that go into it. But if I'm like, well, it's a mid-century style and there's, it's a slab style door, I've got to select hardware. Like I'm thinking about all of the items that I have to select, and I'm only going to provide that price point to a client, like the nitty-gritty price point, when I've thought about what's actually in the scope of work and they've accounted for everything. But yeah, I want to be able to have like on the spot pricing just to give somebody
just like in the past it's been from this to this, and be able to have some level of saying these numbers out loud.
Yes, I think
it'll be a real confidence booster. Like you start to be comfortable with that. That's why I was thinking role playing.
Because the opposite of comfortable probably looks something like this. So you get a client or you have a potential client and you have the scope of work and you write it up and you have really looked at how many hours it will take you, right? You're adding up the hours, then you're multiplying that. You're getting into a design fee, whether it's a flat fee or an estimated fee, you're still providing, I think, usually some level of ballpark idea of pricing.
Yeah.
You look at it and you go, oh, that feels like a lot. And you decide to the client, right, before you even send it, that you can't charge that much.
Yep.
And so you
self-selected.
Yep. You go back and you shave off money to where it's more palatable. But who is it?
Like, oh, 25,000, I'll shave it down to 22.
Yep.
Or whatever you think. And it's usually unique to your personality. And it's very much a realization of like, okay, I'm not my client right now. Like, what am I don't have any business doing this.
Yes. But I think this is such a common practice. And I only know this because I've 100% done it in my past. I'm not like, again, we don't talk about things here that we haven't done ourselves. Like we've made all the mistakes.
Yeah.
at least once, maybe more, and had to get clarity in our own money mindset around certain
Yep.
things. Um, and so sometimes, like, because I came from a firm where clients were millionaires and they would come in with millions of dollars to spend in disposable income. And now in my own firm, I am working with people that I know are hardworking, have saved money for years and years. And I'm somehow aligning myself more closely with like this working class client, right? I didn't have any problem asking millionaires for lots of money, but
Mhm.
suddenly, like the clients who are nurses or even doctors sometimes, and I look at how hard they work and I think, gosh, I don't, maybe this is too much in design time. Maybe I'm too expensive. And I decide for them that I
Mhm.
am not worthy of asking for what I actually know I need to ask for. And so I shave it off.
Brutal.
Yeah. And so without without ever, like, I've only ever had this happen one time, but I've only ever had a client come back to me and ask if the price could be lower. And I said, of course the price can be lower. We have to change the scope.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's a
that,
first answer.
and, and that was after all this mindset work and all these other things. And when I was really charging what I was worth, and that, oh, that's a little bit more than we wanted to spend. Is there any way that we can lower the design fee? Yes, we can change the scope of work. And we did. And I
Mhm.
still got the job. I still got paid. I didn't get paid as much as I wanted, but I also didn't do all the work that they asked me to, right?
Right.
So
Change your
the
scope.
trade-off, the trade-off was that I did a smaller scope of work for the amount that I'm actually worthy of.
Great.
And that is what I want
A
my
win.
clients to fully embrace, because I think, and I know this too, because again, I was in this position, like going out on my own, taking jobs that, Julie, you've had this exact same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take a
Oh yeah.
job that you normally wouldn't take or isn't like your dream client because you've got bills to pay and there's stuff going on. And you're like, I have rent that's due.
Yeah.
And
Good little
this
filler.
this job
Bill.
is going to be fine, right? And suddenly it's like the longest job ever. You feel like you can't charge more because you already quoted them a fee. Things are just like
Maybe
sideways
it's like
off.
taking longer.
Yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that if you had charged what you really wanted to charge in the beginning, it would have been right
Mm-hmm.
on. And so this is where, like, when you know that you're good at something and you feel like you can charge a lot for it, you found alignment, right? This is the
Yeah.
manifested
Yeah.
quality of
That is
being.
definitely the sweet spot.
Yep. Yep. And so I think when energetically you're like, maybe I'm not as good at this as I need to be yet, I won't charge as much. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
right, there are like a million reasons why you will talk yourself out of charging what you are worth. And again, I'm not saying like every beginning designer needs to
Right.
charge an astronomical amount of money per
Yeah,
hour.
no, you need to be fair for
Yeah,
your experience level.
absolutely. Commensurate with your experience, but also commensurate with your talent, your time, your
Mm-hmm.
energy. Like make sure that you really feel aligned with the amount of money, and truly ask yourself, like, is what I'm charging what I am worth?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, what we know about design, and again, this is a luxury space, so these are luxury properties usually. And if they're not luxury properties and this is an investment in someone's home, it is an investment in someone's home, meaning you are increasing the
Mm-hmm.
value of that.
Yeah, directly.
Yep.
Usually directly increasing the value of the real estate.
Yes. And people know this. It's not like they don't have any idea. I mean, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the time, why do people remodel? Well, they remodel because there's some kind of damage to the home. They are sick and tired of living with the ugly ass cabinets and countertops that they moved in with. And they finally saved enough money to redo it, or there's an issue with function, right? Those are the three main reasons why people remodel. But when we remodel, we absolutely increase the value of a home. And I can't tell you how many clients,
I've seen it many times.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have a story about that.
Yeah.
You did a home, was it 2 years ago?
There's been a couple where people have had to sell their house. Yeah.
And then the over asking amount that it went for was, and the feedback gotten after the sale was, oh, they loved all the fixtures and finishes.
Yeah, and like the sales go through really fast and the clients get the highest comparable in the area. There's like all these major bonuses working with the designer.
So I always like to think that if I'm coming at it from that perspective and somebody ends up selling their house within a relatively short period of time from the amount of remodel, and there are a lot of people that are remodeling directly to sell their houses to increase the sales price, that if I'm able to talk with the realtor and we're having a conversation and the realtor's like, well, if we do all this work, we should be able to get a return back of X amount of dollars. I'm going to base my fee on 10 to 12% of that return. Not the whole, right, over and above what they could, like if they listed it right now versus what they expect to list it for,
right?
My fee should be around 10 to 12% of that listing price after the project is completed, because that is the value that I'm bringing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's really easy to see how you can get to. So for instance, I did a project in San Francisco where the clients invested $50,000 into a remodel, and we did a new kitchen facelift, bathroom facelift. Sorry, not even a full bathroom, a powder room, lighting and paint. So for $50,000 of investment, they were able to get back $200,000 in the listing price. That's
10% of that is
phenomenal return. Yes. And so my fee was absolutely. So then after you minus the design fee and the initial, you've still made $130,000. That's a pretty good return on your investment.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So when you start to look at it like that, and especially in a space like that, I think that it makes a little easier to, oh, I could charge $20,000 for this scope of work. And it makes absolute sense for me to do so because they're going to get this over asking, or
when the homeowner is getting several $100,000 in additional value, that puts things into perspective as well. I think I think at one point we noticed that if we redid the finishes like in the bathrooms, it increased the overall price to by 30%. I think that's what my client, who's a real estate developer, decided that the finishes we did in her bathroom helped her increase the value by 30%, but maybe it's even more than that.
I mean, I think it depends on the market. I think it depends on, there's a lot of things, like the market is weird right now because the interest rates are high. But there's not a lot of inventory either. So it's just a different kind of market space. But depending on what your client needs, at the end of any project, you've increased the value of their home. So for instance, if a client did a remodel and then they wanted to pull the equity out of their home and they had it reappraised, it's going to reappraise for more. The equity that they have in their home is going to be greater, and they're going to be able to pull out more of that refi. So there are tons of advantages to the remodel. And I think if you're not creating a space for yourself to profit accordingly, you're probably undercharging. And so undercharging is an energetic of money.
Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to add that I think makes it feel like there's a fun spin on all of this
Yeah.
is if we look at ourselves truly as like branded designers, like if we were, designing like Gucci handbags, like there's a tangible product that's a handbag that someone gets to buy
Yeah.
that maybe you designed. But for us, we're designing, let's say, people's houses. And so it's like, but what if we thought of ourselves as like, well, I'm this handbag. And so like, I always have a certain stamp that I put on everything. And, that family, what if they don't change those rooms for like 10 to 20 years and you really are like a vintage designer, like really putting value on those types of things, you start to realize that they are going to use these pieces for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing wrong with really thinking of yourself as Louis Vuitton or as Gucci or Hermes, whatever your favorite brand is. Like, because how you go into those stores, oh, this handbag is $3,000 and this handbag is $7,000. And sometimes you're like, but why? But then, but you realize like, when you have those products, you'll keep that bag forever. You'll keep those shoes, sunglasses, you do tend to hold on to those things. They last much longer.
Yep.
They bring you a ton of joy. Well, why wouldn't it be any different with your house?
Sure.
And your designer? So I love the idea. For me, that gives it a little bit of like fun and exciting energy when I'm thinking about like how much I want to charge, is like really bringing myself in as this leader of lifestyle,
Yeah.
like however you want to talk about yourself, but like really using your own natural talents and creativities to really think about how much you should charge to design someone's house, or sometimes it's just a few rooms, but usually it makes a pretty big impact on their life.
I mean, most of what we do is so transformative. It really,
Yeah.
I love watching Queer Eye because
Yeah.
there's transformation in the entire process, right? It's the life coaching, it's the hair and grooming, and then there's obviously the interior design aspect that Bobby brings, but we do the same thing, right? I don't do it in
more. Yeah.
it usually takes a little longer. Thank you, television. But there is this absolutely transformative quality that happens. I mean, most of the time we have habit changes because the door's in a different place, or suddenly you are coming in and there's a piece of furniture now to receive your keys and your mail that wasn't there before. And the coat closet is big enough to actually hold all the coats and the shoes. There are pieces that just become better and create different habits. And then those habits actually start to create transformation in the way that people live and work and interact with their spaces. It's one of my favorite things about this work, whether it's furniture or an entire remodel. But I know, because it is so transformational, like really the transformation has to start with me and my approach to what I'm doing and what I'm worth. And if I forget that I'm bringing this amount of value and then I get scared because I'm not making enough money, right? Like that could happen too.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time.
There's a lot of times where it's, if you undercharge and then you're like, oh, now I need to get more projects, I need to get busier.
And that's a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. So there are just so many moments where aligning what you're bringing to the table with what you're charging is a way of getting out of your survival into thrive, right?
Yeah.
we want you, like, this is a hard business. It's also incredibly fun, incredibly creative, could be incredibly lucrative. And, that should be the thread that we are pulling through this podcast over and over again. And I hope it's clear, loud, and concise. But we like to be able to have more money, more time, and more freedom, you actually have to be charging an amount that makes sense for you. And in order to be able to charge that amount that makes sense with, again, your level of experience and what you're bringing to the table, those things have to be aligned with your own money story. And if your money story is off, then you're not going to charge enough. You're going to confuse your client. You're going to confuse yourself. You're not going to send out invoices, right? Like there's just this.
And there just is a stopping point to that. Like the wheels are going to fall off the car and the engine is going to break down at some point.
So
just a matter of time.
That's one of the things that we talked about earlier, that we haven't mentioned yet, is the being in receiving mode. And receiving mode is the mode in which our energy is open to more. And it's a practice, right? It's not just like, oh, I'm in receiving mode. Well, how do you get into receiving mode?
Yeah, it's good to do things daily, usually, especially when it requires your thinking. You need to really practice.
Yep. So, and oftentimes gratitude and receiving go hand in hand. So some of our best daily practices start with gratitude. And when you are in gratitude, you naturally become a receiver. And when you're in receiving mode and you're open to more, the ability to ask for more is also increased.
Yeah.
And so taking steps to really understand what your money mindset is and getting into what are your blocks to receiving? Like, does it strike? If we were to start with a little exercise, like somebody asks you how much you charge and you say $100 an hour, any fear in the body whatsoever, that is a good clue that you have a money story that needs some attention. And I would start with that like 100 and just
hourly rate. Yeah, that's a good one. Right?
Okay.
You can also play with monthly.
125. Any fear there? No, great. Keep going. 150. Ooh, got it. Something. I feel a little something somewhere, right? You'll know it because our bodies are really intuitive and they're very expressive. And they tell us all kinds of information. But if you practice saying out loud, I am $250 an hour, and you can say it without any kind of fear, zinging, like something going on in your body, and it feels really easy to say, or 300 an hour. I mean, just go until you feel like this point of, oh, what is that? Like, where do you feel it? At what price point? And why, right? Why would you not want to charge X amount of dollars per hour? Write that down. And if it's like, well, I don't have enough experience yet, but I'm really freaking talented and I'm in demand. Well, are you going to get the experience that you need along the way?
Yes.
Yeah, probably. And so maybe it actually is correct for you to be charging very close to that price point. And then figuring it out. And again, like we've created
tools to push the edges too, because otherwise you need to be stair-stepping your way and the business needs to be in growth mode. So it's always good to be stair-stepping your way towards these numbers. You can do it a little bit on this project and then a little bit more on the next one. Actually, that's what you did, Andy.
It is. I learned along the way.
Like using from one to one, like, well, when I jump from this one and then I jump to this other one, in 3 projects, I've jumped a whole, 10 yards or whatever. And I think you were able to do a good job of sort of a little bit over here. Well, then it'll get me to a little bit over here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too,
That
because
was really smart.
I started with really easy clients and I felt like the number I provided was accurate. And then I got like, and they weren't difficult clients, but they needed more from me. And I realized most clients were actually in the second set of clients. And so when I gave them the number, I increased it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It went up by about $3,000, but that was commensurate with
Smart.
what they needed. And and then the next job, I was like, I probably need to increase again because I didn't account for X, Y, and Z. And so I jumped up another $1,000. And now I feel like my pricing is pretty dialed in. And again, there's always questions to ask when you are doing a flat fee. There's a variety of ways that I am getting to my price point.
Yeah, putting parameters.
Yes. So again, complexity of the design, understanding who the clients are. So I always do an exploratory phase before I give the final fee. So that
Uh-huh.
we have a chance to work together and I actually understand. Like I'm working with a couple right now who could not be lovelier, but
Uh-huh.
she really requires a lot more talking things through and hand holding.
More of a talker.
Just needs to explore all the options and feel really comfortable with the decisions. And
Yeah.
so, and the only way that we can really do that is to talk through and draw through and, do these like working meetings. And
Yeah.
I am just fine with that because it's giving me the opportunity to understand what they're going to need in the future. We are
Nice.
building trust right now, but I know
Yeah,
that like
that's
the
good.
amount of money that I thought I was going to charge for their project has actually already increased because we have these working sessions. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this isn't a unique moment. This is who this client is, and she is going to require more of my
Yeah.
time. And because I understand that in this exploratory phase, I am able to, when we get to that big number in a couple of weeks, um, I will have a substantial reason for why I'm charging what I'm charging. And
Yeah. And I think the trust process also, like, you guys will see that you've come to some level of rapport in the way that the problems get solved.
absolutely.
It's like
Um,
rapport, chemistry, whatever you want to call it. I think it's really smart because ultimately it's like sort of spending time with people, creating reasons to spend time with people. Because ultimately you sort of develop the work from there by having relationships. That really makes a
yeah.
lot of sense.
Well, and I mean, I'm asking for big numbers. And when we started and there was this range of project, they were trying to understand, what it might cost to hire a designer, and the scope of work has changed, right? There's all these reasons why. But because I am willing to like start out with this initial phase and that it doesn't have a cap on it because we need to get to an end point, I can
Mm-hmm.
only get to that end point with some back and forth input, right? It's
Yeah,
just more
yeah,
back and forth than I thought, but as we've developed this rapport and I get feedback and I'm literally just like, I can't believe this is happening, right? Like these clients are dream clients in so many ways
yeah,
because the feedback I receive is we were just talking over the weekend and we're so glad that you're our designer because we feel so well cared for and like you really understand us even though you're not a mom, you understand like the needs of our family and how important it is for my wife when she is trying to take care of our little ones, like all the things that she might need. That's like
yeah,
hugely gratifying to me to hear. And I know that there is literally a value on the other side of that comment. And I'm not trying to
yeah.
exploit that, right? Like I'm not trying to be like, great, I'm gonna jack up their fee by X amount of
No, no,
dollars
no.
because
No, I think it's just a sign that like when you found those people or when they found you, it was along you can always tell like when you're doing a certain amount of personal transformation. And I feel like came to you when you had done a certain level of personal transformation. And weren't they the client who said, oh, and what days do you paint? So they know not to call you on a Monday.
yes. So
Um, You can tell
Absolutely.
it was coming in from this period of time
Yeah.
that you were in.
I love that I've attracted clients who are on their own growth pathway and understand their limitations and also what they need. And so it's really um, energizing to have people that are in a similar growth mindset space
Mm-hmm.
and who are just so respectful and grateful and yeah, I mean
That's huge.
it's I do, I mean we
I
do a
think
lot.
that's a sign of what we're talking about.
It
That's how
is.
you know is when you start to look around and you go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
these people that are in my life are acting this way. I got clarity and now they're here.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I think it is such a beautiful reflection of the growth that I've put in that I can look around and see like the kind, really generous, caring people that are in my circle of clients, not to mention my circle of life, but just,
Yeah, exactly. That's like how you really know, oh,
yeah,
this is working. It's showing up.
it's so true. And so that's just one part of the mindset there, but
Mhm.
this money mindset piece is I feel so passionately about
Mhm.
feeling so comfortable talking about money because so much of our business deals with money and it's let's face it, right? We all have a life to live and our lives are not getting less expensive. Um, and we have to be able to provide for ourselves and our families. And this is one area where if you get really good at it, it will pay off in so many expected and unexpected ways.
Mhm.
And so having conversations around money, have them with your friends, have them with us, have them in
Yeah.
the community, have them, but
Just
have
practice, practice.
practice because it is, I think there was for so long this idea that talking about money was gauche.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Especially if you're at a company.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of, and I mean,
Things are different now, though. You're right.
it's so different. And I
Yeah.
also, this is true for artists as well. So as the internet has changed the world and all these other things, the need for a gallery, and I'm not saying there isn't a need for a gallery, but the need for a gallery is minimized. And now artists are directly going to the public and selling their art. And that used to not be a thing that was permitted. It was so looked down upon. And really
Right,
artists
right.
were so exploited. And this is
Yeah.
a similar thing where I think the idea of how business is done and how we go about it really needs to have a shift because
Mhm.
as women, we are, I mean, I know so many women that are the primary earner. My three
Yeah.
sisters are
Pretty
prime
common.
examples, plus several of my good friends and quite a few of my clients. And so
Mhm.
we are a force to be reckoned with. But I think that there's also this flip side where we weren't really supposed to be very educated about money. And
Mhm.
so there's all these old thoughts around talking about money, having money, being good with money. That
Yeah.
I think we owe it to ourselves to challenge ourselves to break those old ideas out, throw them out,
Yeah.
um, get good at our business, get good at our money, be comfortable with our worth, and charge what we are creating value around because
Yeah. I think that's the most important thing is really think about how much this is worth. Like, I think for me, when I get caught up in how many hours it takes us to do stuff, I price something differently than thinking this is how much it's worth.
yeah,
So I think that's such an important reframe for me is like really think about this and how this is impacting their lives once the project is done.
yep.
That's the product that you're giving them. And that
Yes.
product could be alive for easy 10 years.
Or more. I mean, we mostly recommend, I certainly know I recommend whenever possible to get heirloom quality pieces, because you're doing a job right now that they're reupholstering all this stuff,
I
right?
know, so I'm so fired up.
Well, for a variety of reasons.
There's different reasons too. I mean, I'll go over to someone's house and surprisingly, it's maybe almost 10 years later and it looks the same as when we put it together for them. They just left everything that way. And
Yeah.
it still looks fine.
But I think also investing in higher quality pieces means that less is going into the landfill, which I personally love. You can always reupholster something that's high quality. And there's just a lot to like about the investment of high quality things.
Like if you need to decide to spend your money, I will always say if it's going to affect the quality, then just wait.
Yep.
I mean, unless you're in some weird situation where, oh, we have to have dining chairs and they can't be more than, whatever amount of money. And, it's fine. Like if it's a rental, it's okay to buy, $250 dining chairs, and stuff like that. But when you're really working on a house that's like for a family and the family's around and everything like that, heirloom is great, because then usually they will have it for a long time and they could very well recover things.
Well, I even think like I'm about to install a couple of heirloom quality rugs, and were the rugs expensive? Of course they were. But also, like when the dog throws up or the kid spills something, that rug is going to be able to be cleaned and saved versus some other synthetic material that it's not going to let go of the stain, or it's just never going to look the same, right? Like that wool rug is going to look fantastic after Papillon comes and cleans it, versus, the Wayfair rug that, yes, of course, costs less, but in the end of the day, it just isn't gonna hold up. And so,
definitely makes me think about how much something should cost. I think about it very differently when we're thinking of in these terms.
Yeah. And I think again, these are important conversations to have, because I mean, I did have a client that had a dog that was aging and they were like, we just don't want to spend any money until the dog's no longer with us. Like we know that he's not going to be around for much longer, but we want to enjoy him as long as we can. And we don't want to invest until, so we're fine investing in these things, but not the rug. And I was like, yeah, totally get it. And then doggy passed away and they took some time to grieve. And then they came back and bought the really beautiful rug because it was the appropriate time. And so, but I think, having conversations that are related to use and longevity are also part of this lexicon. And I think sometimes it's an easier sell, like similar to the handbag, like, okay, I'm going to buy this $10,000 Birkin bag. I'm going to have it for the rest of my life. That means I'm going to carry it every single day because I love it so much. Right. Well, 10,000 days is a long time, but it's entirely possible that somebody might in fact carry that bag for the rest of their life every single,
or at least just have it, to use it when you need to.
But I mean, I think the idea of like using something that's high quality and the amount of mileage that we put on it, like it can handle it because it is such a high quality piece. And that sometimes those items of investment are in fact worthwhile. Like my clients are going to walk on their rug every single day. They're going to do yoga on it every single weekend. There's all these things that went into the purchase of these rugs. That makes sense for their family and that level of investment. And it's a similar level of investment in us, right? Like we are the ones that are helping create that. So when you look at like okay, I can help you create this thing that's from West Elm, and I'm
Yeah.
still going to charge what I charge, but that furniture is only going to last you 5 years, maybe.
Right.
Is it the right investment for you? Or should we talk about like doing one piece at a time over a longer period of time because that is a better investment? Again, these are all conversations that come back to how comfortable we are talking about the
Value and the quality and ultimately the price.
thank you for taking those words right out of my mouth. It's perfect. I mean, yes, that's exactly it. And so it's all related and it's all very interwoven. And I think if we could leave you with anything, it is knowing your money story, like find out what it is, find out what your ceiling is. What's your money ceiling?
Money ceiling, like when you feel the blocks coming in around a certain number. Usually it's pretty consistent with a monthly number that you might notice monthly. I'm hovering around this amount.
Yeah.
That might be your money ceiling. Or like you said earlier, feel it in your body when you think about $100 an hour, 125 to 150, 200, 250, and feel all those amounts in your body. That was also a good idea.
Yep. So know those things and then practice, 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 and practice some more talking to people, family. I mean, I think most of our money stories are learned at home. So if you talk to your family about money, see what their reactions are around having conversations. I mean, I think that's a
figure
really
out like the
fun.
big things that happen to the family
Sure.
financially. And you might not open it up and like do all your healing with your family because sometimes that gets tricky. You could just find information out and then
I
relate it back to your own healing at another time.
I think I told you this story. I'll just leave with this like funny little anecdote, but a long time ago when I was a kid, um, I I don't remember how or why, but my mom, we started getting food from the food bank. And
Mm.
my mom started bringing home this food and I, without having a conversation or anything else, like, assumed that like something had happened in our financial, I was about 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed that something had happened in our financial um uh
You
like
just tell something had changed.
something had changed. Thank you. I'm like sputtering all of those words. But like my dad was a firefighter. My parents had an
Mm.
apartment business and rentals. And it felt like that certainly like getting food from a food bank, which I equated with needing, like having a need,
Uh-huh.
meant that we were somehow like all of a sudden qualifying for food bank food. And I mean, it years and years later. So I'm working on my own money story. And then the instructor was like, go back to your family and like talk about these moments where you thought something had changed or you felt like there was a difference, but no one ever talked about it. So I called
Mm-hmm.
my mom and I say, so, hey, what was going on that time that we had to get food from the food bank? And she goes, get food from the food bank. And I was like, yeah, remember when you're bringing home all that food from the food bank? She goes, I was volunteering.
Oh God, you would have
And
never made that connection. You thought something was wrong.
yep. My mom was volunteering at the food bank. And
So she was just bringing stuff home.
if they had any leftover food at the end of the shift, the volunteers would take things because they were
Yeah,
afraid
all
that stuff
right.
would spoil in the next week that they were there. And so, yes, so we were getting like this weekly food box that I assumed was because, and so I mean, that one significant event created like this whole entire thing that happened
You were just holding on to it all those years.
all the years. Here I'm thinking like we have some like massive financial crisis going on that suddenly we can't pay for
Yeah,
food.
that's wild.
And it was because we'd never had a conversation, but I do remember like internally thinking like, oh, I can't ask for that thing for my birthday because we
Mhm.
obviously don't have
Yeah,
it.
so it affected you.
It did. It did.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's funny because my mom, like it was a nothing event for her that like she started volunteering at the food bank. she was bringing home food. That was just like a bonus for her that we were getting, I don't know, like peanut butter and some sweet potatoes and other random things.
She was just there and they didn't want it to go bad. And so she
Yeah.
knew she could put it to good use.
Yep. But for me, I thought that there was like some serious financial problem going on. And so, I mean, really, so there's like so many things. There are so many things in our past that can shape how we,
Yeah.
the
And
comments
you
about,
literally did hold on to it
yeah. And I
until
mean,
you
money
cleared it
doesn't
out.
grow on trees. You have to work hard in order to make a good living.
Yeah.
There are a lot of money stories out there, but I think finding yours and identifying it and really digging into how you have come to relate to money is going to be a game changer
Yeah.
for.
It's incredibly meaningful and symbolic. And you'll notice that once you see what the story is, that it's sort of that same story is wrapped around, like in
Yeah.
this case, all of your clients, or,
Yeah.
you see this like huge pattern if
Yeah.
you haven't already.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important. And I would say, think about like if your money ceiling is, I think it's very common for people to have a money ceiling of either 10,000 a month or 20,000 a month. And you could certainly be more than that, and that's great. But think about where your money ceiling is.
Well,
Because
I
I
mean,
think
there could
there's
be,
personal reasons that are holding you back in your business if you think about it. It's
yeah,
something that happened that has nothing to do with this business. And
but
so
you
it's
could
like, why
have
not just think about things, clearly?
you could have like a $6,000 money ceiling. So you make $10,000 every month, but somehow $4,000 a month, like unexpected things keep
It's
happening.
used up.
My
Yeah.
car, my car has a repair. My house has a repair.
I need to pay for this trip.
Unexpected
You're just sort of like, it just happens.
hospital stay, right? Like, and here's a good way to know if it's a ceiling or not. It's the same amount of money every time,
Yeah.
like almost to the penny.
I've had that happen where
I
I
had it
said,
happen.
I don't want to spend, I have $200 in cash. It's just sitting right here, just in case. And then like some bill is like exactly $200. And you're just like, you can just tell that it's related. Like
Yeah.
you might not know why, but you just go, oh man, I literally just had an exact amount sitting there.
Yep.
And then it's boom, it's gone. And I always know that's a money ceiling when something like that happens.
Yeah. A good way to think of it is your get ahead money always getting dipped into?
Yeah,
So if
right.
you're trying to create a savings account, an investing account, something that would require more than your monthly take in that like is covering all your bills and everything else, there's your money ceiling. And so getting
Right.
beyond that is going to require you looking at your money story, aligning with the possibility of more, getting into receiver mode, and then you can move beyond that money story. And it might take a few different tools to dig in and shift some things around, but it is possible to get beyond. But I think unless you're
Yeah.
paying attention to the pattern, it's really tough. And I feel like so many people have these, and there's just like maybe a vague awareness, but not like a clarity around how to get rid of it or what it's called, or
Yeah.
there's all these different things that are going on. So, and
Well,
it
I
could,
think having a money ceiling, I like that name because I think before you said that, it was like, oh, this is bad because, you just know something's bad and you think maybe you kind of beat yourself up about it. That's what it is. And then when you said money ceiling, I was like, oh, I can handle that. I can handle a money ceiling. I'll work on it and I'll, dismantle it one brick at a time.
yep.
And then it wasn't like scary.
Well, I think a lot of this stuff is rooted in shame too. And what
Right.
happens with shame is that we don't want to disclose what's going on. And so,
Exactly.
because as you said, something's bad, or I think I'm bad, right? Like, so the difference between shame and guilt, if this is new to you, is shame is I'm bad, And guilt is I did something bad. And oftentimes money again is this thing that no one teaches us about. None of us learned about money in school. We've all had to come through a finance course in the school of life. And it's a travesty, really, when you think about how many people are running a business and they don't have clarity around their money and what's going on. And because so many of these businesses are run by women who are really trying to do great things in the world, and there's just this extra layer of cultural bullshit, I guess is what I would call it, that we just don't have the tools that we really need. And so getting clarity on your finances, understanding what a money ceiling is,
your limiting beliefs.
yes, your limiting beliefs, holy moly, like there's so much out there that will keep you from reaching your true potential.
Like
And
I was thinking, one of the limiting beliefs, it has to do with like not with believing that being wealthy is bad.
yes, that's a huge one.
I think that a lot of people sort of get stuck in, for what lack of a better term, like do-gooder, being a do-gooder. And so sometimes part of that is like, well, I don't need that much money, and I'm going to shame myself because I want things, or I want more money, or I want more. And so you kind of shame yourself into keeping it low. And the other thing that I was thinking is a lot of people get this mixed up, but the love of money is the root of evil. But that doesn't mean that just because you want money and you know you need more of it, that doesn't mean that you're in love with it. It just means that you know that you need it, and you know that you want to thrive, and that money is just one single part of thriving. Like thriving is so many more things than just money. It's, having incredible relationships, the lifestyle that you want to have, like you think a certain way, you've transformed your emotional healing, like all this stuff is going to contribute to like the ideal life that you have. And money really is only one piece. I think the hard part is that it gets to be this really big piece in our mind, and it's like bring it back down. I love the word money ceiling because it just starts to feel more manageable, and how you can reframe this stuff.
Yeah. And I think, just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you are hoarding all of it, right? Like there's a lot of philanthropy that happens when people have more, they want to give back. There's certainly a multitude of ways of
generosity, big time.
Absolutely. So I think, when you were talking about some of the limiting beliefs, like the money is the root of all evil is definitely one that I have
big one
all probably heard. And I think, you just have to understand what your beliefs are in order to change them.
Exactly.
And so spending time in these conversations with yourself, your family, really diving back into what the money stories are, if you've developed any new ones, and then deciding what and how you want to change those stories, so that they benefit you instead of silently holding you back, is really the goal. Because money, like anything else, is just energy. And if you have great energy around it, the ability to make more, do more, have more is exponentially increased. I remember a long time ago, I did an exercise in one of my financial courses that was all about how to make your money your best friend. And so literally treating it like a friend.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. So like making sure that all the money in your wallet is counted in the right order, all the bills facing the same way. You have lovingly packaged your money inside of your wallet in a way that it is safe and secure, and you know it really well. So if it's your best friend, are you talking to it on the regular? Are you handling it with care? Are you being a good steward? those kinds of perceptions around money really do change your relationship with money, and it creates a growth mindset. I just wanted more friends at the end of the day.
Yay! I know. I was just gonna say some of the other ones, just while you're working on your money beliefs and finding out which ones are stuck in there, there's a lot of really common ones.
Yep.
We already said money is the root of evil. Like the whole starving artist mindset is really easy for designers to have because we're creatives, and so we fall into that, like, well, artists don't really make that much money, and it's kind of has, you could be in that space. Just check it out if you are. The other one that I see a lot is like anything to do with imposter syndrome. You think that, like, you're not, like, I'm not supposed to be doing this work, and you feel kind of like a lack of confidence. I don't know, it's something else besides that. And the other one for me that always comes up that I know that I'm dealing with, limitation and lack, which is the opposite of like having good energy and manifesting. Feeling a lot of lack, I'll notice this old belief of like, you're too big for your britches.
Yep.
You know, these sayings that you, maybe you're like, oh, I heard that when I was growing up. Like, think about what those were. And those are just some common ones.
Yes, totally. We have a section of money and mindset in the manual. That is going to be ready in January. We don't have a January date yet, but it's coming. And if you want to dig into more money mindset with us, you can join our community, hop on a weekly call with us or a monthly call, depending on what your pleasure might be. But we would love to have you. We're excited. We are starting group coaching on Wednesday of this week. We have a very small cohort that is joining.
Special group.
And if you would like to be part of that group, please reach out on the website under the fringe. It's under dash fringe.com.
Bunch of dashes in there.
So many dashes. And I hope that your holidays are dashed with delight and joy, and we will be back next week with a new episode. So please tune in for that. Thank you again to all of you who are listening on the regular. We really, really appreciate it. And we're so delighted that we're a part of your week. Makes it really worthwhile for us.
Until next time.
Until next time. It's closing time. Bye all.
Thanks for listening and being part of our community. Speaking of community, please head over to our website and sign up for podcast alerts and blog posts. And if you're looking for more resources to up-level your business, create more time in your schedule, and improve your profits, we have a blueprint for your success that covers mindset, systems, business, teams, and tools. Think of us as your unaccredited university. Visit us at under-the-fringe.com and tune in next week for our next deep dive on creating more freedom and less struggle.